even in a community the size of Tulsa, we have more or less kind of a ceiling that we can raise. Even with amazing funders, the Kaisers, the Zeros, the Schustermans, there is a limit. And so what we were finding is that with that traditional model, we would top out, if we absolutely just worked ourselves to the bone, we were going to top out between 30 and 35 homes a year. That's pretty much what we could expect to raise at full bore. Well, most of you have to know there's a little bit of a housing crisis. Anybody heard anything? So we've got challenges from all sorts of directions, and the COVID pandemic really exacerbated a number of these issues. We experienced tremendous supply chain issues that drove up the cost of goods. Labor, particularly in the construction industry, those plumbers, those electricians, those concrete companies that have been owned by, the same individuals, what we're seeing is the next generation, a lot of their children do not want to work in the trades. And so we're seeing a contraction of laborers and suppliers, which is, again, driving up the cost. The most recent and the most impactful has been interest rates. Every time that interest rate clicks up 1%, it has some pretty demonstrable impacts on our work. So it's really a perfect storm. People that own homes right now and locked in at 2.5, 3.5, they're not selling. So now we have an issue with supply, and demand is high, and we've got a low supply. So we're trying to do everything we can with the city of Tulsa, with our philanthropic partners, to really push into what is a tremendous shortfall on the number of houses. There was a study conducted that just got released in this past year that was funded by the Ann and Henry Zero Foundation, which analyzed all of Tulsa County's housing. And the long story short is we have a current shortage of 13,000 affordable units that we need today. And so what that means is, families that would like to buy a home, that have done everything right, that have put together a little nest egg, they can't now buy those homes. The average median sales price in Tulsa in about a 3-year span jumped over $130,000, just the value of the home. So when you're talking about people that are public school teachers, that are delivery drivers for Amazon, that are checking us in at the doctor's office, that are more or less on kind of a fixed income, in the sense that unless income or education changes, they're not going to be in the corner office, but they're doing a very big function in our society. If there are not some tools that we deploy to kind of artificially game the system, a lot of these folks will never own a home. Traditionally, you could just rent. Well, I can tell you, rents are outpacing mortgages as far as growth. And so the opportunity just to simply rent, it's not affordable for a lot of these families. So all that being said, it's really a perfect storm. But back to the original format, if we wanted to build that $150,000 house, we'd go out and raise that money. And then Habitat would act as the mortgage bank, and we would finance that back to the family for 30 years at 0% interest. It's a great model. It has helped hundreds of thousands of families across the world. But again, in the size of the community, we're capped. So when COVID hit, we really had an opportunity. We had a choice. Shut the doors, because we were not allowed to use volunteers. And if we shut the doors, we have a staff of about 80 full-time employees. We were going to have to start furloughing folks and potentially laying them off. Well, thank goodness for a progressive board that really believes in our staff. And we took a page out of Ken's side of the business on the for-profit side, and we said, what would this look like if we just pushed into professional contractors? And by the way, the banks have a lot more money to build houses than we do. So let's build these houses on construction lines. Well, that solved one problem. We could start building many more homes, and our growth has really hockey sticked. My first year in 2015, we built one new home, and we remodeled 9 homes that unfortunately had been taken back through foreclosure. This year, we're on pace to complete 80 new homes. And so we've had some tremendous growth, but a lot of that is because of the way we have shifted our model. So today, we use a line of credit to build our houses, which kind of gives us the ability to forecast and pace, so we can do much more. The challenge we have, so we have to account for that 0% interest mortgage. Now we're using banks' money to do the mortgages. And we're very fortunate. We have about 7 community and regional banks here that provide our families mortgage rates that are about 3% less than what you can get on the open market right now. And that's largely because there is something called the Community Reinvestment Act. Banks, once they reach a certain size, are required by law to lend to low-income communities and low-income borrowers. The challenge is, when we all think of nice banks, they're typically located in really nice areas of town. They're close to business. They're close to high net worth individuals. So it's very challenging for these banks to lend in these communities where they don't have brick and mortar. So what we do is we came up with a model where we would be the bridge. We'll do kind of the connection, and we will get these families ready to buy a home, and then we will make a warm handoff and create that relationship with the bank. So, but we still have that 4 to 5% interest that we have to contend with, because the model, we want the net effect of a 0% interest model. So what we essentially do is buy down the mortgage with something called forgivable down payment assistance. So if a family, we'll just use some round numbers, $150,000 home is what we're going to sell, but the family's income will only sustain a $100,000 mortgage. We have to make up that 50. So fortunately, there are a number of federal grants, state grants, philanthropic partners, like I mentioned previously, and then partners like Harvard Avenue and individual contributors. What we do is those families now have a first and a second mortgage. That first mortgage is paired to their income. So we will never exceed 30% of their take-home pay on their mortgage. It's exactly what a bank does, because they say you're taking on too much debt, this is a risky loan, we're not going to lend you that money. So all we're doing is the same thing, but with this forgivable down payment assistance. And one of the cool things about forgivable down payment assistance, it's a 5-year forgivable grant. So if a family gets into a home, they pay the bank on time, there's no delinquencies, no issues. At the end of 5 years, that $50,000 is forgiven, and that equity is injected to the property. You may or may not have heard, but there's been a real focus on household wealth disparity, particularly between white households and households of color. And it's bad. We're working predominantly in North Tulsa, and so our North Tulsa initiative here, 90% of our work over the last 2 years has been in North Tulsa. And the household income disparity is pretty striking. So it's a real challenge, but this is one of the quickest ways we have found to help a minority family build wealth. Most of our families today, they have solid jobs. It's required as part of the program. Like Ken said, we do not give away homes. What we really do is give you kind of a helping hand. And so even if these families work somewhere that have a 401k, they don't feel like they have disposable income to participate in it. So again, that's kind of one area where they're having the ability to build wealth and grow wealth over time is kind of taken away. So for us, and I know I'm biased, but real estate is one of the quickest ways to help these families. So with that, I'll kind of get into this and okay. So I've covered the banking partnerships, the professional contractors, utilizing down payment assistance. Obviously, the production has ramped up tremendously. Our goal ultimately is to be building between 200 and 250 new homes a year. And so we're making some great pace on that. I can tell you one of the challenges, because of the areas we build in, there's a lot of issues with land and title issues. Particularly in North Tulsa, I can speak to this. Land has been transferred with good intent, but it always hasn't been papered up and done legally. So a lot of times, 9 times out of 10, when we purchase a piece of property, we've got a year of title work to clean it up and determine who actually owns it, get quitclaim deeds, get things cleaned up. So buying land for us is a challenge. So right now, we try to buy land about 5 years out from when we'll actually build on it. So you can imagine the amount of money we have to raise and capitalize to buy that land, because we're buying for things that we're not going to build on for a number of years. Volunteers. So this is an important one, and this is something that I was very concerned about coming out of the pandemic. So during COVID, most habitats just kind of shuttered their doors and didn't do any kind of construction because we couldn't use volunteers. Well, as we pivoted into using professionals, we obviously saw this amazing growth. People were still working. We could do it in a safe way. But as the pandemic subsided and I started getting calls about volunteerism, I knew we didn't want to slow down our pace. But the organization was founded on volunteers. We depend heavily on volunteers like the miracle workers, and we wanted to create a space. But a lot of times nonprofits do silly things. They create work to appease volunteers. We wanted to have work that we needed to have done that would be helpful, and also be a value add for volunteers that wanted to come in and help us with these families. So what we have begun to do is we created a wall plant in our facility. And so it's a controlled environment. It's outside from the elements. A lot of times in the past, we schedule a volunteer day with Harvard Avenue. We get rain, we're rained out. We get a 100+ degree day. Most people are going to bow out. It's going to be an unproductive day. So this is an opportunity where we can bring in about 20 volunteers, and you would be amazed. 20 volunteers in about a 4 to 6 hour period can pre-build all of the walls for a home. And so what we've done is we're bringing volunteer groups in weekly that come in and do that. And so they'll build all the walls, we'll stack them and bundle them, and then when the slab is ready, we're drop shipping those to the site. Well, it not only kind of speeds the process up, but it also cuts our framing expense by a full day. It usually takes our framers 2 days to frame a house. Well, if we bring them the walls already done, we cut it to 1 day. And so that's a real meaningful financial savings. The other thing we do with volunteers now is we kind of wait until the end of the home construction process. We bring volunteers in to do the landscaping, laying sod, things like that. What we found over the years, and I would fall into this category as well, you bring a group of office-based employees to a home, and you go, today we're sheetrocking. And, I've done some sheetrocking in the past, but what you would ultimately see is you could look down the wall and your sheetrock is doing that. So there's that. There's some liability with being on a roof, all sorts of extra safety precautions and things like that. So I think what we have done is we have really tried to work to create volunteer opportunities that are needed, that are productive for volunteer groups, that are easy in the sense that it's a controlled environment. You don't have to really be all that skilled. Can you do this with a chop saw? Can you measure? Can you use a nail gun? And so what we have seen is the groups largely have been pretty happy with kind of this new change. And something that was pretty concerning was, how are these large companies that have been working with us for years and years going to react? Because volunteerism is a huge component of companies like Williams and One Oak and One Gas, and we don't want to upset them because they help us financially. Well, a lot of those companies are still incorporating remote workers, hybrid work environments. So actually the feedback has been, look, it's really hard for us to commit to a 14-week build. Everybody's not in the office at the same time, so this is going to be staggered. So it's actually worked out pretty well for us as well. I'll mention too, I said something about the miracle workers in the cabinet shop. We're the only habitat that we know of that has a full service custom cabinet shop. We build all wood cabinets. Who's heard of the Restore? All right, you need to tell the rest of your friends that didn't raise their hands. So we own and operate 5 retail stores called the Restore. And essentially, if you can think of it, it's kind of a discount version of Home Depot or Lowe's. We also sprinkle in donated items. We have a division of our company called the deconstruction team. And if you're remodeling a kitchen, you're remodeling a bathroom, I mean, heck, we even get people call us and they go, we bought this house in Midtown, but we're going to gut it. You can have anything you want. What we do is we come in at no charge, and our team will actually remove cabinets, countertops, light fixtures, plumbing fixtures, whatever. Anything that we can reuse and it can have a second life, we'll do that. Because the big impact of the restores is that it covers about 85% of our operational overhead, the revenue from those stores. So it's paying my salary, it's helping pay my benefits. And for donors, a big thing that's always a concern is how much of my donation is actually getting to the people they're trying to serve. Well, for us, a lot of it. And so we're working towards covering 100% of our operational overhead. We've gone from 1 store to 5 stores in about 5 years, and the impact has been huge. No more so impactful than during COVID. We saw a little over 300 habitats close their doors permanently and not reopen during COVID. We took a very conservative approach to our budget and sustainability in creating these revenue streams. So when the pandemic hit, of course we were nervous, but we had built up a reserve that helped us keep everyone fully employed. Of my 80 employees, about 50 of them are hourly, and they are working in our stores, working on our construction teams. We kept them employed. We did a lot of deferred maintenance. So we brought them in and we said, look, we're going to repaint the inside of the store. We're going to do this. Some of the stuff we just couldn't get to. So I'm very proud of that. Our board of directors is populated by amazing folks that have a lot of business acumen and experience, and they've really been helpful in kind of helping create an organization that's truly sustainable. So the restores are great. All right, so I mentioned the North Tulsa initiative. So this list is a little dated. We've added a number of developments on here, but what we're pivoting from, Habitat generally, and we were the same, what we would do is go into a neighborhood and essentially target vacant lots or homes that were boarded up, and we would acquire those and we would slowly kind of go through. And it really had, if you think of shotguns and shotgun shells, it's buckshot. You know, if I were to shoot against that foam board, it's going to spray. And so it really depleted the overall net impact. So we're still doing a little bit of the what we call infill, which is, filling up these vacant lots. But we've made a big shift into full neighborhood residential developments. And that creates a whole new challenge, mainly monetary. We had to go out and hire some people that were experts in that. But the net impact is we're able to have a much more impactful presence in a concentrated area than we have been in the past. And so the neat thing, we've seen probably, when you think of the habitat network, there's probably about 40 habitats across the country that are beginning to do work like this. And then everybody else is kind of still doing kind of the single home. But for those top 40, We're starting to see townhome developments. We're starting to see full neighborhoods built out. And so we're really proud. We've somehow, Tulsa, Oklahoma, we're flyover country. We're a mid-market size, but we're in the top 10 of all affiliates out of 950 affiliates. So we're very proud of that, and the community support has been integral to doing that. North Tulsa, there's a lot of myths, a lot of misconceptions. It really does have a lot of the earmarks of what you would think some stereotypical urban settings. But really, North Tulsa, because of its large geography, is also very rural. It's the only part of town that I routinely drive through and see people riding horses down the street. There's a lot of open farmland. There's a lot of residential, land that is prime for redevelopment. And our geographic area, just to give you some boundaries to show you how big North Tulsa is, we kind of start at 244 and go up to 56th Street North, and then we go on the west, the LL Tisdale, all the way to Harvard. This is a giant rectangle. And there are multiple communities within that, and they each have various challenges. Some are a little more advanced. They have new housing, but largely all have not been touched in 40 years. And a lot of the housing inventory over the years has been purchased by investors, converted to rentals, and so that creates a challenge. So that's why we have really focused on this. At the end of 21, we raised about $16 million to support this from some of our big philanthropic partners. And we committed to building 250 new homes in 5 years. So we're at the beginning of year 3 here in January, and we're already at 180 of the homes, so we'll hit the 250 and surpass it, which is great. So a lot of the work we do, particularly in communities like North Tulsa, is we have to be the tip of the spear. So when the private sector looks at an area and says, look, there's no market, we're concerned, people don't want to make that a community of choice, or we don't see a lot of real estate transactions going on, or they're very depressed. We can be the tip of the spear and go in there and either help stabilize a market, create new comps. And what we have seen is some of the market rate builders see an opportunity and then they begin to come in. One of the things we do not want to do is create total communities of affordable housing. We want mixed income development. So we actually work alongside a number of private developers, and this took forever because, as you can imagine, if I'm a private developer with my personal money on the line, you're messing with my investment if you build something next to me that is going to detract from my home. So we've gone through, a number of iterations employing private architects to redesign our houses. When I started, we were very much a traditional habitat. It was an A-frame, one-color house, front door and a back door. You could look through the house. And we would build it. It only had one bathroom, but we would build it with up to 5 bedrooms. And the first dedication ceremony I went to was a single father who was a barber, and he had 7 children. The 5 oldest were teenage girls. And all I said was, good luck getting in that restroom. So today, we have also, the other thing too, we didn't have garages. So we began to employ, in one of the first houses, we worked with Ken and the Home Builders Association to build a house in 24 hours. It was actually 27 and a half, but I'm counting it. And the Home Builders Association came in, and they were one of the first, our new craftsman-style house that we built in the Kendall Whittier neighborhood. And it really got the visibility up, and it got people asking questions. And so I thank Ken and the Home Builders Association for helping us, because they really gave us a shot in the arm. But it was a 1-car, 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom home. But what we did is we built it in a row of homes that were built by Capital Homes. Great guy, David Charney, owns that company. And again, he was one of the first builders that said, okay, I'm going to give you one. And so we built one of our houses with the Home Builders Association amongst all these Capitol homes. Now from the street, it's really hard to tell somebody else built it differently. Now if you look from the side, you're going to see that our house stops and his keep going. So they're bigger. But from the street, they checked all the boxes. It was visually appealing, had a great color combo. We went from one color on the house to about 4. So we had some intentionality, but there were economical ways to really like up the level of the home. So, as I was mentioning, and I'm going to show you a little video of this development. We're nearing completion of phase 2, but this is a 23-unit townhome development. These are all owner-occupied townhomes. If you're familiar with Kendall Whittier, so you got University of Tulsa over there at Harvard and 11th. If you know where the Circle Cinema is, right there at First and Main, First and Lewis. If you just go just north and cross over 244, this development sits on the site of the old Whittier Elementary School. TPS had knocked it down. Quick Trip bought it, and it was going to be a filling station, and the community kind of had an uprising. Fortunately, this was before my time, so I missed all the fireworks. But Quick Trip, thankfully, they wanted to be a good community partner, so they relinquished the property, and it was acquired by another nonprofit. And so we came in and bought half of the site, and this has been a really exciting thing. One of the challenges with our homeowners that we face a lot is that part of the program is you have to be a first-time home buyer. Well, most often, our families are also the first home buyer in their immediate family. Their parents rented, that's all they've known, they've rented. And so when you go to the idea of owning a home, folks that we work with are no different than people that have millions of dollars. They come in and do the same thing. I want the big yard, I want the big closets, I want this, I want this. The challenge that we have seen is everybody wants a big yard until you get one. And so it's very important for us that we are viewed as a good housing developer with the city, with the communities we build in. So one of the things we're doing now is we're pushing into more of this multifamily development. All of these developments are operated and governed by their own homeowners association. Now, we have a heavy hand on it. We kind of put our thumb on the scale. We sit on the board of these HOAs, but they truly are governed by the residents. What we're able to do, though, is all the common area maintenance, that's taken care of. So you don't even need to own a mower. You don't need to own a weed eater. That's being taken care of by the HOA. So from a ongoing kind of sustainable way, taking care of the property, this will be repainted every 7 to 10 years. If there's a storm comes through and the shingles are messed up, the HOA is going to get on that and fix that. So that's been a real neat way to help that. The other thing is over 70% of the families we helped last year are single parent head of households. So typically it's a single mother, 2, 3, 4 children. And so they're definitely working one job. Sometimes they're supplementing with a part-time job. So you may have great intentions of mowing that lawn on the weekend, but the reality is you don't have the time. And if you don't have the time, you're going to get the citation. And so we're pushing into this to address this. But this is an amazing development that we're nearing completion on. This was our first single-family development in North Tulsa, up at 33rd Street North and 33rd Street North in Columbia. If you're familiar with the Gilcrease Police Command Center, this sits right to the west of this. We worked with a church, New Jerusalem Baptist Church, a longtime congregation in North Tulsa. As we were prospecting land, we came across this big chunk of property sitting by the church, and it was all platted for a neighborhood. And we were like scratching our heads, like, how is this already platted? So we did some research. It already had infrastructure. Somebody had come in and put in water lines and sewer lines, had power. Well, we came to find out that it was a developer sometime in the 80s that went belly up, and the development never got built. So we worked with New Jerusalem Baptist Church to buy a number of those lots and put in this neighborhood. You'll see these homes are 2-car garage, 3 or 4 bedroom, 2 bathroom. We've evolved, and some of it is because of the market and what has happened. As money was really cheap, builders had an opportunity to build more expensive homes because people could borrow more. And if you can make 10 to 20% profit building a $150,000 home or a $350,000 home, I'm going to build $350 all day long. So what we saw, though, unfortunately, is a lot of those builders that were building starter homes kind of slowly migrated up the chain, and it's created a real hole on that starter home level. So we've actually kind of had to up our game. The thing we always try to do, wherever the market is, we try to stay below their floor. We have a lot of good partners. We've got a good relationship with the Home Builders Association. I don't want to ruin that. So we don't want to mess with anything the market's doing. We try to stay under that. But what we have seen is when my wife and I graduated in 2000 from Oklahoma State and moved over here and bought a house in Owasso, the days of buying the $110,000 brand new home are gone. We can't even build $110,000 homes. So we're really trying to play that role to the degree that we can. The other thing is we want the properties to hold their value, and we want them to appreciate over time. These are financial vehicles and tools, and we really try to impress that upon our families, that homeownership can be a huge freedom and a huge tool for you, but it also can be your worst nightmare if you don't take it serious. So Peace Point is a great development. Wilshire is another North Tulsa development that we're working on, about 32 homes. I know it says 40 to 45, but city had other plans. And then Black Wall Street Square. So I'm skimming through this because I've got some other visuals I'd like to show you real quick. And Ken, you give me when I need to stop.
You got 15 minutes.
Okay. All right.
So Black Wall Street Square, where is that?
So this is a really cool development located just north of Pine on Reading Street. This is something else we're trying to do, is we're trying to be really progressive in our approach to development. We had a gentleman named Terry McGee. He was a firefighter in North Tulsa, or firefighter for the Tulsa Police Department for 30 plus years. And then his second career, he got into home building. He was really one of the only 2 or 3 active African American builders doing anything meaningful. And so the Tulsa Development Authority put out a 2-acre parcel of land for an RFP. And they said, look, design something, it's a competitive application. And Terry called me and said, hey, what do you think about co-developing? We'll do 50-50 on this. 50% of these units will be market rate, 50% you can help on the affordability side. It was great. We had 7 days to complete the application, and somehow, by the grace of God, we won. And everything was going well. We were about a year into the planning, and then Terry had a boating accident on Lake Skiatook and drowned. And so the company is still in the project. His son, his oldest son, has kind of stepped into his role, but does not have the experience his dad had. So we went from carrying half of an $8.4 million project to carrying the whole thing. But this is going to be an absolute game changer, and what we really hope will be the catalyst for a lot of really cool development in North Tulsa. So it's a 25-unit townhome development. All of the end cap buildings, so everything on the end of these 4 buildings, is a larger market rate unit. They'll have 2-car garages. They will have granite. They will have all the bells and whistles that a market rate builder would build. The interior units are ours, but outside, you're not going to be able to tell what's what and who lives where, who got help and who didn't, which in my business is kind of the secret sauce. We don't want to do anything to other our clients, and we don't want to do anything to give neighbors the impression that their neighbor didn't truly buy their home. So as you can see, these are really, this is a different type of thing than we've ever done. It'll be the most expensive development per square foot we've ever done. But because this was a city-owned parcel, we have had to employ a lot of community meetings. And so we have been put through the ringer by City Councilor Vanessa Hall Harper, who is just a fierce advocate for her community, and then a lot of community input. One of the things we did on this that we didn't do on the Whittier has siding, so it'll have to be painted every decade or so. This is almost all masonry, and these colorized panels are actually a pre-coated heavy gauge metal. So from a sustainability standpoint, there's nothing on these really outside of like caulking and minor stuff that'll ever really need to be done on the exterior of the building, which when we think about an HOA, our HOA fees are small. We're talking $25, $35 a month. So we seed those HOAs with a sizable kind of starter fund to help them, but we really wanted this to look good. One of the things we kept hearing in these community meetings is why doesn't North Tulsa ever get anything that looks like the stuff downtown or on Brookside or on Cherry Street? Well, our architect actually pulled everything you see from the buildings downtown, the WPX building, the Vast Bank building. It's a limestone brick, it's bronze and kind of aqua metal coating. We pulled a lot of those kind of design elements off of those buildings. So this is something, if I was a private developer, I would go build this on Riverside all day long. I'd build this on Brookside. It really has that high-end look. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. Everything we build. So that's another, I appreciate the question. So a lot of times we're asked, because there was the volunteer piece, but even when we were using all volunteers, we have to build to all of the minimum residential codes. So there's nothing that they allow Habitat to do that they would require of a market rate builder. So everything we do. So these units all sprinkled. So they have sprinkling systems throughout. Anytime you share more than two, essentially once you get over a duplex, so if you do a triplex, you have to sprinkle it if you're doing townhomes. So, but this is going to be a extremely, extremely exciting project for us because of the name of the development. So it was selected very intentional by Terry. If you've read the Tulsa World, watched the news, obviously the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre kind of brought a newfound kind of focus on North Tulsa. So what we started to see was our philanthropic partners were coming and asking about ways to deploy funds in North Tulsa. Our corporate partners have been asking. And so this is our answer to trying to be the tip of the spear in North Tulsa and really kick off some new development. But because of the name, we have national partners that have come on this project. So we have companies that are supplying all of the roofing material. It's called TPO. It's a commercial grade roofing material. That's donated. All of the brick has been donated by a company called General Shell. All the fencing, Ameristar, which is a local company, donated all the wrought iron fencing for this. Thermal windows, all the windows, another great local company owned by a guy named Dennis Lane. They're donating all the windows. I know I'm leaving out some other things, but what we have seen, and I know it's largely because of the name of the development, we've seen an outpouring of support for this project. And really, if this was my private development, and I could build this down on Riverside, these would be approaching $500,000 units. So we're really going to be putting something in North Tulsa that has the opportunity to have some staying power over time. It's going to look really good, but it's also going to be kind of a shock to the residential system up there. And we hope that private developers will kind of follow in suit. The big misconception about North Tulsa, so before Habitat, I had the great fortune of helping found a nonprofit called Crossover Community Impact in North Tulsa. And for about 7 years, I was up there 7 days a week. I was working Monday through Friday running Crossover Health Services, which is a medical clinic. On Saturday, I was coaching youth sports, and on Sunday, I ran sound at Crossover Bible Church. So I was up there all the time. It's kind of a joke, but it's real. On Sunday morning, the size of North Tulsa doubles. And so every church you go up there, full parking lot. Like, where are these people coming from? Well, what you have seen is that a lot of folks that grew up in North Tulsa, they've had the opportunity to go to school. They come back, they start a family, and then they want to buy a home. Well, there have not been homes that you could find like in Broken Arrow and Owasso and Jinx. So these folks have gone and started families in a lot of these suburbs. Only for the absence of houses that are similar to those, they would be living in North Tulsa. Their family is still living there. They went to school there. It's their friend network. It's their social network. So what we really see and what we've heard, and I heard firsthand in working for Crossover, is you've got college-educated African-American professionals that if there was housing available, they would choose to live in North Tulsa. So we're hoping to see some of that influx and some of those folks migrate back to the community once there are some housing options available. So that's Black Wall Street Square. We are actually having a ceremonial groundbreaking for that Friday, January 12th at 9 a.m. It is just north of Pine on MLK. So it's on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Reading Street. So it's going to be very prominent. In fact, from these units, you can see the downtown Tulsa skyscape. So it's just a mile north of the IDL. So it's a beautiful development.
What happens when a person has to be fully employed in order to be able to apply for the house?
Yeah, so we require two...
What happens if they lose their job?
Yeah, no, very good question. So did everybody hear that? So he wanted to know, you've got to have a job to apply for the program. What happens if you lose your job or you have a stoppage or your hours are reduced? Well, one of the big things we do, we are now the only HUD-approved homeowner counseling agency in Tulsa County. And a lot of what we do is the counseling not only to get you ready for a home, but if you encounter issues once you have the home, we also have a lot of resources at our disposal to help. So your question is very cogent. We're dealing with some issues right now that are still kind of lingering problems from the pandemic. A lot of our homeowners had their hours either greatly reduced or they were laid off. You know, if a company couldn't open its door, most business owners had to do a reduction in force. Well, we were very fortunate. The state, through the Oklahoma Housing Finance Agency, they allocated $100+ million to actually help families that were at a certain income and below both take care of what they were delinquent and then also gave them 6 months forward of mortgage payments. So really helped, so cured their delinquency with the bank, but then also gave them some breathing room to find additional employment. And so we've helped about 25 families that have had that scenario. The big thing we try to do when we encounter our families in the process is we tell you, look, don't be embarrassed by life. It happens. It happens to everyone, irrespective of income. We are your biggest advocate. If you lose your job, if you have a child that has some debilitating medical issue and you have to be at the hospital and you can't work, let us know. We stand there between you and the bank to keep you in that home. And so we do a lot of that. The only issue we ever encounter is when a homeowner just what we call goes dark on us. They won't return calls, we can't get a hold of them. And we're very transparent in our education process. If you do not take this seriously, if you do not communicate with us, you will lose your home. And so it's very rare, but most families are very quick to reach out to us. I've got one question right there.
Let's kind of switch the question.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Show us, and then
Absolutely.
5 minutes or so for questions.
Yes, sir.
What is that area? What are we looking at?
Oh, I'm so sorry. So this is the Whittier development. Let me see here if I can. I'm a Mac guy, so I'm sorry. These are all new clicks and buttons. This is just north of the Circle Cinema. So this is Lewis on the right. So you're looking due north right now from the drone. So 244 is right underneath the drone, and then you cross that bridge and you're at Kendall Whittier Main Street. So Circle Cinema, all of that. So this is, if you drive down 244 today, you're going to see that big red for sale sign. So it's absolutely transformed that neighborhood. Yes, ma'am.
What if they want to sell them?
So we do not stand in the way. What we try to prevent is we don't see this. Most of our homeowners are not upwardly mobile. And when they get a house, they tend to stay in the house. Every year, we're very fortunate we get to celebrate a number of mortgage payoffs, which is huge. But in the event life happens, we have someone get married and the spouse has a home, and or they have to move for work, whatever. They can do that. Now, if you do that before the 5-year period is up, they're on the hook to repay that portion of the forgivable down payment assist. So when they sell the home, they'll also have to pay down the note that they have, and they'll have to pay down the portion of the subsidy as well. We also have learned with our homeowners, we've employed a lot of very restrictive covenants. So while this isn't a good example of that, our single-family homes, we would occasionally see families that would come in and want to customize their homes. It could be paint. It could be a lean-to shed on the side of the house. Well, no more. Essentially, we kind of dictate and control a lot of the aesthetics of the house today. And that's not to say you can repaint your home. You just need to come and visit with us, and we'll help you guide that process. We want folks to understand they own this. We're not your landlord. We're not your superintendent, but we really want to help you use this to build wealth and grow wealth over time.
Can they retain in rent?
No. So these have to be owner-occupied, has to be your primary dwelling residence. And I can tell you, we have had those incidents in the past where we found that someone was subletting, and we'll immediately foreclose.
Betty Rosalie, 5 years ago, this class built a home for my husband's daughter. I just want to let you know that my daughter-in-law is now heading up Habitat in Fort Texas.
Oh, awesome. Well, Betty, thank you. I mean, your husband did untold work for us over the years. And I can tell you this. So Jim was a long time, and you correct me, he was a long-time employee of Redman Majunkin. All right. So that business has been kind of changed and sold, but the, why am I blanking on his name? The Ketchum family that owned Redman Majunkin. So it was primarily due to the tragedy with Jim, but I got plugged in with a guy named Craig Ketchum. And ever since, he was a big part of sponsoring that home with the church. Ever since then, that Ketchum family every year has made a substantial, meaningful contribution to our work. In fact, they were a big sponsor on the Whittier townhome development. So thank you so much. Yes, sir. Yeah, so if you see that, if you see that church spire, you go 2 lots to the north, and that's the home we built in honor of Jim. Yes, yes, it was fire engine red, yes. So real quick, I want to touch on this. So like I said, we're migrating into larger and larger developments. This is something we just closed on. This is a 20-acre tract. It'll be our largest development ever. If you're familiar with Carlton Landing at Lake Eufaula or the Wheeler District in Oklahoma City, this has been designed, it's something called new urbanism. So essentially, a lot less walking, a lot closer homes, a lot of sidewalks, a lot of alley access. It's almost forcing community. But we're doing this kind of the same thing that they did at Carlton Landing, but in a workforce scenario. Ultimately, though, we'll probably only develop about 50% of this. The other lots, our intention is to sell those off to market rate builders because we want variety in the housing topology. We want larger homes, larger incomes, and things living in this. This is in the Crutchfield neighborhood. If you're familiar with the Outsiders House Museum, it's almost just immediately west of downtown. It's one of the oldest platted neighborhoods in Tulsa, and it's just been, neglected for decades and decades and decades. So we're really, nobody outside of my board and my staff has seen this, so you guys are the first. So we're really excited, but it'll have retail in it, mixed use, residential. So anyway, all right. Thank you all so much for your time.
Y'all can see how much habitat is changing. Anyway, goodbye.